My phone rang at 3 in the morning. It was an Officer Miller. His voice was tired. "Ma'am, are you the owner of The Humble Crumb on Main Street?" I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. "I'm the leaseholder." "Yes." "Why? What's wrong?" He sighed. "There's been a break-in. Significant vandalism. We have 2 suspects in custody. Richard and Cynthia." "My parents." It continued. "They've destroyed industrial mixers, slashed open bags of flour, and they spray-painted Family Trader on the main wall." I looked over at Owen, who was now wide awake, watching me. I took a breath, and the strangest feeling washed over me. Not anger, not sadness. Clarity. "Officer," I said, "3 months ago, my father disowned me for $150,000. Turns out, this was the greatest gift he could have ever given me. To understand why my parents were sitting in a holding cell, I have to take you back 3 months, to the last family dinner I ever attended. My parents, Richard and Cynthia, lived in an upscale suburban house that always felt less like a home and more like a showroom. Everything was beige, spotless, and expensive. It was all about image. My older sister, Scarlett, and her husband, Easton, were already there, whispering in the kitchen. Scarlett was the family's golden child, a 32-year-old aspiring influencer who had never held a real job. Easton was her manager, which meant he managed her Instagram posts and my parents' bank account. The air in the house was thick. You know that feeling, that static before a thunderstorm. Everyone was smiling, but no one's eyes were. We sat down at the perfect dining room table, and my mother, Cynthia, started. "Claire. Honey. We're so glad you're here. Scarlett Haas. Well, they have a small hurdle they're facing." Scarlett didn't just ask for help. She gave a presentation. She and Easton had charts. They had projections. Their latest wellness brand, some kind of detox tea, had been hit with massive fines from the FDA for making false health claims. The small hurdle was a $200,000 debt. I just listened. I didn't say anything. I was thinking about the historic downtown building I'd just toured, the one with the exposed brick and the perfect morning light, where I was finally going to open the Humble Crumb. When their presentation was over, the room went silent. And then, all 4 of them turned to look at me. Not with hope. With expectation. I felt my blood run cold. "Why are you all looking at me?" My mother reached across the table, her rings clinking on the glass. "Claire. Honey?" she said, her voice dripping with that sweet, manipulative poison I knew so well. "The Humble Crumb can wait. This is your sister's life." They weren't asking. They were telling. They knew I had saved $150,000 over 10 years of working 80-hour weeks. They had discussed my finances. They had calculated my worth. And they had decided that my dream was the collateral for her failure. I looked at Scarlett, who was staring at her nails. I looked at my father, who was nodding encouragingly. I said, "No." It was quiet, but it landed like a bomb. "What did you say?" my father asked. I said no. I'm not setting my future on fire to fix Scarlett's mess. Again, my father's entire face changed. The mask of the supportive patriarch just evaporated. His eyes went hard. He pointed his finger at me from across the table. "You give us that money, or you are no longer a part of this family." I stood up. The chairs scraped against the hardwood floor. Then, I guess that's settled. I walked out of that house, and I didn't look back. When I got back to my apartment, I didn't cry. I didn't feel sad. I just felt quiet. That ultimatum wasn't an attack. It was a price tag. My father had just told me exactly what my relationship with them was worth $150,000. My no wasn't a sudden burst of anger. It was an accounting 10 years in the making. See? I had been the family's silent investor for my entire adult life. I was the responsible one. When Scarlett decided to launch a yoga app 5 years ago, with zero business experience, who paid for the developers I did, that was $20,000. Vanished. When that failed? And she pivoted to healing crystals. Who paid for the bulk inventory she couldn't sell I did. Another $15,000. When my parents wanted to buy a new car for the family, but their credit was shot from bailing Scarlett out. Who co-signed the loan I did. A car that Scarlett now drives. Posting pictures of it on her influencer trips to Bali and Greece. All while I was working 80-hour weeks, waking up at 4 a.m. to bake, covered in flour and sweat, living in a tiny apartment above a loud coffee shop, putting every single extra dollar into an account labeled The Humble Crumb. It took me years of therapy to finally put a name to it. It's a classic toxic family system. Scarlett was the golden child. Her failures were just bad luck. Her demands were passion. She could do no wrong. I was the scapegoat. The responsible one. But my success, my discipline, my savings, those weren't seen as accomplishments to be celebrated. They were a resource, a utility, a safety net for the real child. They didn't see me as a daughter. They saw me as an emergency fund. And an emergency fund doesn't get to have dreams of its own. That night, staring at the peeling paint in my tiny kitchen, I finally understood. This wasn't a family. It was a business. And I was its only performing asset. And I was done. I changed my phone number that night. But in a family like mine, a phone number is just a flimsy little gate. The harassment started 2 days later. First, the emails came to my work address. My mother, Cynthia, had found it. Your father is sick with worry. Claire. He hasn't slept. How can you be so selfish? An hour later, Scarlett is just devastated. You've broken her heart. You're tearing this family apart. Then came Scarlett's contribution. She didn't contact me directly. Of course. She went public. She posted a long, vague rant on her Instagram story about toxic people who forget where they came from and the pain of being betrayed by your own blood. Suddenly, the Google business page for The Humble Crumb, a page I had only made to secure the name, was flooded with 1-star reviews. Dozens of them. From Scarlett's followers. Owner is a heartless snake. Refuses to help her own family. I'd give 0 stars if I could. They were trying to destroy my dream before I had even laid the first brick. The escalation peaked on Friday. I was walking home from the coffee shop downstairs, and my father was just standing in my apartment lobby, waiting for me. My heart hammered against my ribs. How did you get in here? We need to talk, he said, blocking my path to the stairs. We have nothing to talk about. Stop this nonsense, he said, his voice low and angry. You're embarrassing your mother. You're going to help your sister. This has gone on long enough. I stared at him. The entitlement, the absolute certainty that my life, my work, my money was his to command. I realized they would never stop. They wouldn't stop until they had that $150,000. To them, my bakery wasn't a dream. It was just an asset they hadn't cashed in yet. That night, I told my boyfriend, Owen, what happened? I was shaking. The guilt was suffocating me. Am I the crazy one? I whispered. Am I the monster? Maybe I should just. Maybe I should just give it to them. Just to make it stop. Owen, who is a financial advisor and the calmest man I've ever met, just put his hands on my shoulders and looked me in the eye. He became the voice I desperately needed to hear. Claire, listen to me, he said, his voice firm but kind. This is not help. This is financial abuse. That word abuse, it hit me like a splash of cold water. They are demanding, he continued, that you set yourself on fire to keep them warm. They are demanding you destroy your entire future to enable Scarlett's destructive behavior. You are not their retirement plan. And you are not her emergency fund. The only way to win this game is to refuse to play Expedienme. He was right. All the guilt, all the confusion. It just evaporated. And all that was left was that cold, quiet clarity. The next morning, I picked up my phone. I didn't call my parents. I called the landlord of that historic downtown building. Hi, it's Claire, I said. I'm ready to sign the lease. And I'm wiring the $150,000 for the first year's rent and equipment deposit. Today, for 5 weeks, my life was peaceful, blissful, even. Owen and I spent every evening at the new bakery space. We painted the exposed brick walls. We polished the original hardwood floors. The new industrial ovens were delivered, gleaming stainless steel monuments to my future. I'd go there in the mornings before the sun came up, just to stand in the quiet and smell the plaster and the paint and the promise of it all. For the first time, I felt like I was building something that was truly mine. Then, on a Tuesday, I got an email. It was from a new address I didn't recognize, but the name was my mother's, Cynthia. The subject line was just urgent. My hands started to shake. I opened it. It said, Claire, urgent. Life and death. Scarlett is in the hospital. Please come. My heart just dropped out of my chest. Life and death. All that anger. All that resolve. It just evaporated. And all that was left was that primal, childhood fear. What if she was in an accident? What if my father had a heart attack, despite everything? That what if is a powerful hook? I grabbed my keys and I drove to the hospital. My stomach in knots. I ran to the room number my mother had texted me. I pushed open the door, and there she was. Scarlett, lying in the bed, looking pale and annoyed. My father was in the chair by the window. My mother stood up when she saw me. Her face, a mask of practiced tragedy. There were no doctors, no beeping machines. Scarlett was wearing her own silk pajamas. What's going on? I asked. My voice tight. What's the emergency? Thank God you're here. My mother whispered, rushing to hug me. I didn't hug her back. Scarlett wouldn't even look at me. The stress was too much for her. Cynthia said, her voice cracking. The debt. The threats. Her body just gave out. We thought, if you saw her like this. I stared at her. You staged this. They had staged a hospital visit. They had used the words life and death to lure me to a hospital room to ambush me. Again, the manipulation was so profound. So shameless. I almost laughed. We're desperata. Claire, my father. Richard. Suddenly boomed from the chair. We don't know what else to do. We already gave her the $50,000 from our retirement. My mother's head snapped toward him. Richard. Don't. But it was too late. I was confused. What $50,000? I thought the debt was $200,000. It all came out. The whole pathetic, ugly story. This wasn't the first time. This was just the first time I had said no. This was the secondary twist. 6 months ago, Scarlett had faked a cancer diagnosis. She had told my parents she needed $50,000 for experimental treatments, and they, in their blind panic, had drained their retirement account for her. They only found out it was a lie after the money was already gone, spent by Scarlett and Easton on a wellness retreat to recover. I looked at these two broken people, and it finally clicked. They weren't just here to get money for Scarlett's new debt. They were here to get their money back. They were demanding my $150,000 to plug the hole that Scarlett had blown in their own retirement fund. They were trying to sacrifice my future to fix the one they had already willingly destroyed. I stood there in that sterile, Baiga hospital room, looking at the three of them, the con artist in the bed, the fool who enabled her, and the man who bankrupted them both, and then my mother, Cynthia, grabbed my arm. Her grip was like a claw. Her face, the one that was always so perfectly composed for her friends, was crumpled and ugly with desperation. "Claire, please," she sobbed. "She's your sister, we're your family, you have to help us. We'll lose the house. You can't let this happen to us." She was begging. The image-conscious matriarch, who cared more about the opinions of her neighbors than the dreams of her daughter, was openly begging me to save them from a mess they had created. And as I watched her, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity. I felt nothing. The final string had just snapped. It was the most profound, deafening silence I had ever felt. "It's funny," I said, and my voice was so quiet, so calm. It scared them. My mother stopped crying. "My whole life," I said, "I have been terrified of you saying that, of you cutting me out. I've been working my ass off since I was 16. Not just for the bakery, but for your approval. For one moment where you would look at me the way you look at her." I looked at my father, who was staring at me with hollow eyes. I looked at Scarlett, who was pretending to be asleep, and I finally realized, I don't want it anymore. Your family isn't a family. It's a trap. It's a black hole, and I'm done letting you pull me in. I looked back at my mother. My family is the man who's currently at my bakery, helping me spackle the walls. My family is the life I am building without you. Claire. My mother whispered. But I cut her off. "I'm not giving you the money," I said, delivering the final, clinical blow. "It's gone. I signed the lease. I paid for the equipment. It's done." The color drained from my father's face. The rage that replaced it was something primal, something terrifying. "You spent it," he whispered. As if I had been the one to betray him. I just nodded. "Goodbye. Mom. Goodbye. Dad." I walked out of that hospital room and didn't look back. I went home to Owen. I told him everything. He just held me. I blocked their numbers. I blocked their new email addresses. I was, for the first time, completely and totally free. But I had made one critical mistake. I had liberated myself. But I had forgotten who I was dealing with. I had taken away their money. But I hadn't taken away their rage. That night, my parents, Richard and Cynthia, got into their car, fueled by a level of desperation and entitlement that I will never understand. They drove to my bakery, to the Humble Crumb. They brought a crowbar. They brought cans of black spray paint. They broke the lock on the front door of the historic building. They walked into my dream, and they started to destroy it. They poured paint into the brand new $75,000 industrial ovens. They took the crowbar to the custom marble countertops Owen and I had just installed. They slashed open every 50-pound bag of artisan flour I had stacked in the back. They were there to punish me. To destroy my dream because I had refused to sacrifice it for their lies. But they didn't know one thing. They didn't know about the landlord. An older man who lived in the apartment on the 3rd floor. A man who loved that historic building and had installed a state-of-the-art silent security system. The moment my father shattered the front door glass, 4 high-definition cameras started rolling, and a silent alarm was sent directly to the local police department, who were, at that moment, exactly 3 blocks away. That phone call from Officer Miller was the beginning of the end for them. And the real beginning for me. The aftermath was swift. The landlord, armed with crystal-clear, high-definition security footage of my parents committing felony vandalism, pressed full charges. The damage wasn't just spray paint. They had destroyed the new $75,000 industrial ovens, the custom marble countertops, the refrigerators, the plumbing, faced with jail time. My parents, Richard and Cynthia, pleaded guilty. The court ordered them to pay full restitution, $75,000. The only way they could get that kind of money, they were forced to sell their house, their beautiful, upscale, image-conscious house. The one they were so proud of, the one they hosted parties in to impress people they didn't even like, the very symbol of their status, sold off to pay for a criminal act of petty, disparata revenge. I heard from a cousin, months later. What happened? After paying the restitution, they gave the rest of the money to Scarlett. Of course they did. And now, all 4 of them, my mother, my father, Scarlett, and Easton are living in a cramped, 2-bedroom rental apartment across town. The cycle of their toxicity continues. But the most important part is, I'm not in it anymore. 6 months passed. It's the grand opening of the Humble Crumb. The place is packed. The smell of fresh bread and cardamom and coffee is so thick you can almost taste it in the air. Owen is working the counter, laughing with a customer. My friends are here. My real family is here. Owen catches my eye from across the room and smiles. He walks over to me, wiping his hands on his apron. You did it, Claire? He whispers, his eyes shining. No. I say, grabbing his hand, we did it. He hands me a glass of champagne, and I notice something tied to the stem with a little silk ribbon. It's a ring. My hands fly to my mouth, and I just start crying. Happy tears. Tears of release. Right there, in the middle of my bakery, surrounded by the noise and the warmth and the light. He gets down on one knee. Sometimes, walking away from the people who share your DNA is the only way to find your real family. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally are the ones who put the most impossible conditions on that love. And sometimes, you have to be willing to burn down the life you were given, to finally build the life you deserve.